Hey, everybody. Welcome to the webinar. Great to have everybody here. I got my buddy, John Lee Dumas. What's up, John?
Just rocking and rolling in Puerto Rico, brother.
It's good to see you, man. It's awesome. John and I are longtime friends. As I mentioned on the video, we used to be neighbors back in San Diego. It's just so good to connect again with him. I visited him and Kate, who's also in the chat. Kate Erickson, his other half of the business and life in Puerto Rico. Is wonderful to see everybody in Puerto Rico. How's everything over there in Puerto Rico, man?
We are just about to enter the glory months. Like basically November 1st to May are just like perfect weather in Puerto Rico. We got to make it through September. This is like the hurricane month. So we're going to be quiet about that. But, if we make it past September, we're good.
Okay, good stuff. I mean, it's nice to know that you know the window so that you can brace yourself.
Exactly.
That's good stuff. Guys, as you're joining, I see people coming in droves into the webinar. Please introduce yourself. Say, hey, my name is so-and-so, is where I'm from, and tell us what would be a win for you today. What are you trying to get out of today's webinar? Why did you sign up? Are you interested in launching your own podcast or grow your business? Are you interested in starting a podcast so you can improve your public speaking skills, your communication skills? Pop it in the chat. We want to know so that way John can, tweak his presentation a little bit and know that he's catering it to your needs. So go ahead and pop it in there. Also, we got Jenny in the chat, who is, of course, Jenny, our mayor of Ninja Town. Jenny's inside. If you need any help, she's there. Nicole, my better half, as well, is here. So make sure you ask any questions you might have along the way. We have a questions tab right next to the chat tab up top. So just go ahead and pop the questions there so they're all in the right place. And we can take questions later on. But before I pass on to John, I want to give him a nice, warm introduction. For those who don't know John, welcome to reality. Welcome to the earth. No, just kidding. John Lee Dumas is really a legend in podcasting. Started podcasting in 2013 with Entrepreneurs on Fire, the first daily business podcast out there. Really was an inspiration to a lot of podcasters I know in the circle of podcasting that I meet at conferences, that I see on stages, because he really broke the mold when it came to podcasting and really interview shows and formats. But more importantly, he knew how to monetize his podcast. He knew how to make it a business and not just something he does to feel good about himself, right? He really took it to the next level and really built the script when it comes to that. So this is why I'm so excited to have John here today. He's a good guy, good friend, but also just an amazing business mind and podcaster. So please, this is your opportunity to get the most out of this session. Ask questions in the questions area. Engage as much as you can, because you're going to get as much as you put into it. So I'm going to pass it on to John. But John, thanks so much for being here and presenting for our audience at WebinarNinja.
Well, my pleasure. I am truly fired up to be here. Only one minute correction. Actually, Entrepreneurs on Fire was launched in 2012.
Yes, sorry, 12.
Which is crazy. The only reason I bring that up even though is because we're 8 days away from our 10-year anniversary. So
a decade of podcasting.
A decade of podcasting, 3,700 episodes, over 126 million listens to date, over 2.5 million listens of this show every single month and growing. And we've had a blast. We've, been able to learn a lot. We've been able to share a lot. And that's what I want to continue doing here today with my good friend Omar. And I know Nicole is hanging out as well. I want to say hello to some people that are here. We've got Asia, we've got Colton, Jacques, we've got Nicole, obviously rock and rolling, Lori. We have Lynn in the house. Gary, thanks for those kind words. You took my course several years ago. Great material. I appreciate those kind words. It says a lot of cool people. Looks like jumping in here, like Marianne, Ariane, Jenny, Mariana. Really cool to see everybody jumping in here, and just wanted to recognize you at this point. And I won't be focusing personally on the chat that much as I go throughout the presentation, but I will say that you got people in there, Kate, Nicole, Omar, that will be. And number two, there's definitely time for Q&A at the end. So we're going to have a whole section on answering any questions you have. So jot those questions down on a piece of paper, on a different notepad, whatever you have, and make sure to bring those questions to us. Or again, there's a way to do it here in WebinarNinja. Of course, you can ask questions and we will collect those and answer all of them. So I'm excited to kick off, Omar. When you give me the green,
Go ahead, share your screen. Let's get it going. I want to give a shout out to Scott McCain, who's in the chat. Scott McCain, if you don't know, amazing public speaker, great author. Every Business is Show Business, I believe it's called his book. All Business is Show Business, I believe. Forgive me, Scott, if I got that wrong. Pop it in the chat so everybody can check out your book. And I think it's All Business is Still Show Business is the sequel of that book. So amazing stuff. Good to have you here, Scott.
Cool. Well, listen, I shared my screen, so let me know if all is good to go, because we're going to be talking about the podcast masterclass today, which is how to become a successful podcaster without spending a lot of money or being, as I like to say, quote unquote, techie. Now, today's workshop, we're going to be talking about how to create a podcast. Now, not just create a podcast, so stick with me, but the first section's creating a podcast, specifically how to discover your podcast topic, how to identify your perfect listener, how to understand the types of podcasts that are out there, how to know which equipment that you're actually going to need for your podcast. This is, again, something that a lot of people get nervous about, understandably so. We're also talking about the best recording and editing software, what a podcast studio should look like. You're seeing one with both mine and Omar's there. The 7-step podcasting process. I have a video for this and so much more. We're also going to talk about launching your podcast. We'll talk about the perfect launch plan. Your first episode needs to include this, how to find your first 20 guests if you're going to do an interview show. We're going to talk about growing your podcast audience. Once you've launched that podcast, you got to grow that puppy. Come on. I'm going to talk about which podcast directories you need to focus on, the power of groups and forums, how to make the most of your guest appearance, and my number one growth tactic, and it is not what you would expect. We'll talk about making money, dollar bills, y'all. Like Omar mentioned, we've been making a lot of money with our podcast. In fact, Kate and I just published our 108th, Omar, if you can believe it, 108th monthly income report in a row. We haven't missed a month ever. Throughout COVID, we stuck with it. Yes. And this past month, we did $258,000 in revenue.
That's amazing, man.
$37,000 was net profit. Mm-hmm. We had a 93% net profit to gross revenue percentage there. That's something that we post on every income report as well. So I know how to make money when it comes to podcasting. So I'm going to share.
If you ever want to go behind the curtain, guys, you can go to eofire.com. They have an income report on the top right-hand corner. John and Kate actually do a huge service by like pulling back the curtain and being super transparent about their finances, about how much they spend and how much they make. And you can go back pretty far and see, the progression. So it's a huge thing if you want to take a look at like where they're actually making their money. If you want, it's so easy to stalk John these days. So you could just go to his own website. It's so simple. But as John was explaining all the things he's going to cover today, pop in the chat if you felt like, hey, give me a thumbs up in the chat right now. If you feel like, hey, some of this stuff I need to know, I'm interested in knowing, put a thumbs up in the chat or a fire if you like, if you're feeling frisky. If you're excited for the content, go ahead and do that.
Yeah, and in addition to that income report, we actually bring our lawyer on to give a legal
David.
tip.
Yeah.
David Zizabram in the house, giving a legal tip, and then we bring our CPA on, Mr. CPA on fire himself, Ron, and he gives a tax tip, and he also validates our income report as well, because we want everybody to know that, hey, this is the real deal Holyfield stuff. So when it comes to making money, I'll talk about the 5 ways to monetize your podcast. I'm going to give you a sneak peek of Podcasters Paradise. And I just want to get started because I'm fired up. I know Omar's fired up. I know a lot of people in the chat are fired up. So why is podcasting on fire? Why is podcasting on fire? 64% of Americans have heard of a podcast. I mean, think about that. That is a huge number. That number, by the way, is even higher now. These stats came from a couple years ago, and this specific one that I follow has not updated yet. I'm looking forward to his next update, which I think is coming out this year. But these percentages are going to be higher when it comes out. 44% of Americans have listened to a podcast, and 26% listen monthly. That's 1 of every 4 people are listening to a podcast on a month-to-month basis. And of those, 69%, they're consuming it on a mobile device. So it's like a podcast is always right there in their pocket within arm's reach. And the average American who listens to podcasts listens to an average of 7 podcasts per month. So if you're from Australia, you guys do everything a lot better than Americans. So you're probably subscribing to like 10 per month, if I had to guess.
Yeah, I stopped counting.
6 million more Americans became listeners in 2018 than 2017. And again, this is a thing that's going to keep going up and up and up. So you should ask yourself the question, like, why should I podcast? And so, of course, I'm posing it. Why should you podcast? Because listen, you can't do everything. You can't do everything in this world, but why should you podcast? Well, what if you want to share your voice, your message, your mission with the world? What if you want to connect with influencers in your niche? You can now interview these people. You can have connections and relationships. Like, honestly, before Omar and Nicole moved to San Diego, they interviewed me on their video show. I remember being interviewed by them. They were in this basement apartment in New York City in Manhattan. A dungeon. It was a dungeon. There's no lights. It was creepy. I could still tell they were cool people.
We got to start somewhere, people. Come on.
We started somewhere. This is back in 2013 or 14 or something. Yeah. And guess what? We were able to build enough of a connection and a friendship. So when they told me they're moving to San Diego, as Omar shared in that video, I had them over like the same day or the next day to like hang out, to meet up, because I felt like I already knew them because we had connected. And this is what you get to do when it comes to podcasting. You get to build authority and credibility because you're bringing great value, great knowledge to your audience. You get to grow an audience and launch your business. Podcasting allows you to grow an audience, and an audience allows you to launch your business. Do you think that Omar having an audience with his podcast helped him launch WebinarNinja?
Totally.
You better believe it. Holla. Also, you get to create a platform to sell your products. I mean, I sell my products on my podcast. I know Omar does as well. It's a great platform for that. You get to amplify your current business's reach and influence. If you have a current business right now, why would you not want to amplify its reach and influence with a podcast? And also achieve lifestyle and location independence. I mean, these are two people right here, myself, Omar. We're walking, breathing examples of this. I mean, I launched my podcast in Maine. I moved to San Diego because San Diego was so much better of a weather place and for a lot of other cool reasons. And then we moved to Puerto Rico 6 years ago. I mean, we literally have podcasted from cruise ships because we can. I've podcasted from planes as I'm on a plane, 30,000 feet in the air. I'm podcasting. Like, it's real fun. We called it Plane Cast. It was a lot of fun. So there's a lot of myths, Omar, when it comes to podcasting. I love busting myths because people like love to put up challenges and obstacles in front of themselves. So myth number 1, John, I don't have the time to podcast. And guess what, guys? Time is valuable. You only have so much time. I totally get it. But I'm going to share with you a way that just one day a month, I'm talking one day a month, you can have a podcast that is a frequent, valuable show. Myth number 2, I won't get the tech side. Like, John, I'm just not a techie person. It seems like there's like a lot of like buttons and knobs and microphones and all these things. It is so much easier than you think. I mean, it is so much easier on the tech side than you think. There's going to be a video I share later that will show just that. And number 3, I don't have a radio voice. Let me just be honest. Nobody ever thinks they have a radio voice. Like Lady Gaga does not think she has a radio voice. Like whenever anybody hears their voice on a voice recording machine or whatever those things were called that nobody has anymore, but whenever you hear your own voice being played back to you, it doesn't sound like it sounds when you're talking because it's a different way. It's a different wave. It's a different angle. And you're just like, that, I just sound so weird. No, you just sound different. And everybody sounds different. Everybody has a unique, special voice. So believe me, trust in yourself, trust in your voice, trust in your mission, trust in your message. So listen, we've busted some myths. And I love doing that. I'm going to give you a real quick rundown of my journey. As I mentioned, I was born in Maine. There I am jumping in the fall, autumn leaves. I went to Providence College on an Army scholarship. I spent 4 years as a cadet during my time at Providence College. There I am serving my time as an 8-year Army officer. I got out as a captain, spent a 13-month tour of duty in Iraq during that time. And then after the military, I was 26 years old. I went through 6 years, not 6 months, Omar, 6 years of struggle. I tried law school. I dropped out. I tried corporate America, John Hancock in Boston. I quit after a year. I tried real estate in Maine and San Diego. It just wasn't for me. I was trying all these different things. I was putting in time. I mean, this was a 6-year process and it wasn't working for me. But looking back, it's so obvious. I had no passion. I had no fire for anything that I was doing. And then I had an aha moment it was really, I'd say May of 2012. I was like, you know what? this world does need, in my opinion, it needs a daily podcast interviewing the world's most successful entrepreneurs. It did not have that. There were weekly podcasts interviewing entrepreneurs that I loved, and I listened to all of them, but the world needed a daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs. At least I convinced myself of that. I knew there was at least one person that wanted that, me. And I did, and I want to be very clear, by the way, I had zero experience. I had zero broadcasting experience. I had no online presence whatsoever in 2012. I didn't do anything in the Army that was related to communications or speaking or presenting. I didn't build a social media presence during those first 32 years of my life. I had nothing. I started at ground zero. So wherever you're at right now, you're likely at a higher place than I was. At worst case scenario, you're exactly where I am. But I did go from clueless, and I was clueless, to launch quite quickly. But like you, like everybody here that's on this webinar right now that decided that, you know what, I'm going to go check out what Omar is recommending. I'm going to go check out this guy, JLD, this John Lee Dumas, this crazy American over in Puerto Rico, some island that I don't even know where it is. And I want to go see what he has to say. I went searching too. And I invested in myself. Like, I invested my time, my money in a mentor, Jamie Master. She was a successful business podcast host. I invested in her because I wanted to be a successful business podcast host. I invested in the podcast answer man himself, Cliff Ravenscraft. I joined his mastermind. And by the way, these were thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in investment. Now, did it pay off?
Yeah. And first of all, I got to say, you started in 2012. It was so much harder to start a podcast back then. Like, you really had to figure out RSS feeds and how do I submit, what's going on. It was just so much harder. I remember because I launched 2 years later and it was just as hard. But it's so much easier now with all the tools and things that you'll be talking about today. And then secondly, the resources, like you said, like Ravenscraft's mastermind, things like that, were very limited. So they can charge a premium. Like, we're talking about like hundreds of thousands of dollars if you add it all up, in terms of all the training that was available, and they're the only ones around. So like, you just paid whatever they charged. You had no choice.
The only show in town, as I like to say. And since launch, I've won Best of iTunes, which Omar has as well. We're both recipients of that very coveted award. I have over 125 million downloads in over 145 countries, over 2.5 million listens every single month, consistently generating 150K plus per month. And as you heard, if you were around earlier, this past month, we actually did 257K. So sometimes much, much more. And it is all from a podcast. So quick answer, yes, investing in myself back in 2012 was worth it. Now we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of this entire presentation, starting with that section I promised at the beginning, which is creating your podcast. What's the number one question that I get? John, what should I podcast about? People have an idea, and people sometimes have really specific ideas. But at the end of the day, it's like, what should your podcast topic be that's going to give you the best chance for success? There's a strategy I have for every single person. And of course, in Paradise, we have this really intense, awesome video tutorial that you will leave that video tutorial 100% convinced what your podcast topic needs to be. But the quick version of it is this. You've got to have a piece of paper, draw a line down the middle. On the left-hand side, the word curiosity. On the right-hand side, write the word expertise. Set a timer for 2 minutes and write down everything on the left-hand side you can think of that you're curious about, that you're excited about, that you're enthusiastic about, that gets you up in the morning, that you are fired up about. Timer goes off. Do the exact same thing on the side when it comes to expertise. For 2 minutes, what are things that you're good at? What are skills that you have? What's knowledge that you've picked up and acquired over the years with jobs, etc.? Then you start drawing these lines that you're seeing. You're going to be connecting the dots. Like, what are some of the things on my curiosity side that connects to my expertise? What are some things that I'm really good at skill-wise that I'm also enthusiastic about? That is the center. That is your zone of fire. That is where you can thrive as an individual, because you're both excited and curious and enthusiastic about something, but you also have skills, knowledge, value to give to the world on that thing. Because if you're just doing something you're curious about, I'm going to be honest, that's probably just a hobby. And that's okay. It's okay to have a hobby, but at least go into it knowing that. And if you're just doing something that you're knowledgeable about, that you have like skills in, you're probably going to burn out because you're just because you're good at it doesn't mean you're going to want to do it every day. I mean, how long has Omar and Nicole been busting their butt with WebinarNinja? Like, they would have been burned out if this is something they didn't enjoy doing as well. They didn't have curiosity or excitement. So it has to have the combination. So many people are doing one or the other. It has to have both.
As an example of Zone of Fire, sorry, John, to just jump in, but just an example of Zone of Fire with our podcast, the $100 MBA show, which we've been doing for 8 years now. My curiosity, I love business. I love problem solving. I love sharing, my experiences to help people not make the same mistakes I'd make, right? So if I made a mistake or I had a struggle, I like to share it in a lesson format. My expertise is teaching. I taught for 13 years in the classroom. I have a master's in education. I have multiple certificates in training and assessment. So like, I know that I can do that well. Let me take what I love to do and put it in that format. And that's how the show really got legs, is because I found my zone of fire and built a podcast around it.
So you found your zone of fire. That was a perfect analogy. But guess what? Now what happens? People go, oh my God, John, I've got my zone of fire. But somebody's already doing it. Ho hum. Somebody already came up with this great idea before me. Because guess what? We live in a big, wide world of billions of people. But guess what? That's actually a good thing. That is proof of concept. It was awesome that people were already doing successful interview podcast shows. They were making money, that they were having success. That was awesome. That means there was proof of concept. That means there was listeners. There was a market out there. So now you need to do these 3 things. You do it differently. You become unique, and you add your personality to this. And when you mix those 3 things together, it comes up with something special. Now, how did I do that specifically with Entrepreneurs on Fire? Well, I did it daily. Everybody else was doing it weekly, once a week. I did it daily, 7 days a week.
7 days a week. Saturday, Sunday, guys.
Days a week. Christmas Day, Easter morning, 7 days a week. Number 2, my format. That was how I was unique. I brought in a unique format where for 2,000 episodes, I've since switched up the format, and I've done 3,700 episodes total. But for the first 2,000 episodes, I asked 5 questions. Guys, I built a multi-million-dollar brand and business around doing a daily show, asking 5 questions that were the same questions for 2,000 days in a row. And that was enough to become different, unique. And then me, my personality. I brought energy. I brought fire. I brought excitement. And guess what? Not everybody likes that. Some people like the more even keel vibe, the lower vibe, the more steady. And that's fine too. Those listeners are going to listen to that podcast. And that's fantastic. Now, this is something that I know Omar has done incredibly well. And I am so positive it's the reason why I was so successful from the beginning of my podcast is I defined my avatar, because 99% of podcasters get this part wrong. Your avatar is the one perfect listener, not the broad demographic targeted market, not men ages 35 to 50 who like to drink beer and watch football on the weekends. No, that's a broad targeted demographic. I want the one single perfect listener for you to define that individual. Now you're looking at my avatar right there. I actually have a couple-minute video. I don't even know if you've seen that video before, Omar.
Yeah, the cartoon video where he's on the commute.
I spent thousands of dollars. I would not recommend doing this, but I had my I had my ideas back in 2012.
We all do.
I spent thousands and thousands of dollars creating the scripts and then creating this 3-minute video of Jimmy, my avatar. And I thought it would be the best thing ever. People get a kick out of it. And it was awesome. And people loved it. And I'm glad I did it, because I look back and laugh on it now. But I was that committed to defining my avatar and to letting other people know who my avatar was so that they could identify with that as well, to know if this was a show for them. But what you need to do is not spend thousands of dollars creating a cartoon. What you need to do is sit down with a pen and paper and write a minimum of 500 words of who the perfect listener of your podcast is. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to spend a couple seconds. It's going to be more than a couple seconds, but I'm going to go through who Jimmy is, just to give you an idea of how detailed you should be. And I'm going to be super brief as possible, but like I could go on for 20 minutes if I had to. But listen, Jimmy's 42 years old. He has a wife and 2 kids, ages 3 and 5. Jimmy drives to work every single day. His commute is 25 minutes to work. He gets to work. He spends 8 hours in a cubicle at a job he doesn't like, gets back in his car, drives home. It takes him 35 minutes to get home because he gets stuck in a little bit of evening traffic. He gets home. He plays with his 2 kids, has dinner with his family, puts his kids to bed, spends some time with his wife. And then Jimmy sits on the couch at the end of the night and he says, why? Why do I spend 90% of my waking hours doing things I don't enjoy doing? Commuting to work, sitting in a cubicle at a job I don't like, commuting home, and only 10% of my life doing what I love doing, spending time with my kids, with my family. What's wrong with me? Jimmy is my avatar. Jimmy needs to be listening to Entrepreneurs on Fire during his morning commutes, during his lunch break, and then on his commute home. He needs to be listening to entrepreneurs sharing their inspiring stories and strategies and tactics and failures and successes so that he can become inspired to become his own version of an entrepreneur on fire. Now, we need to be honest. When you're an entrepreneur, you are going to come to 1,000 forks in the road. You're going to have decisions every single day. I mean, Omar, how many decisions do you think you made today as the CEO of WebinarNinja? Give me a guess.
Yeah, it's 6:30 a.m. and I've probably made already a dozen decisions.
6:30 a.m. This guy hasn't even had his coffee yet. He's already made a dozen decisions. You are going to come to thousands of forks in the road. Every one of those forks is a decision. And when it comes to your podcast, this is key. Your podcast, you should not be making the decision for your podcast. Now, Omar should be making the decision for his business. That's a different story. But for your podcast, you don't make the decision for your podcast because guess what? You're not the perfect listener for your podcast. When you know intimately who your perfect listener is, you stop trying to spend so much time at each one of these forks in the road and saying, should I go left? Should I go right? You're spending time, energy, effort, money, and you're probably going to end up making the wrong decision at least half the time. And guess what? Take away all that mental bandwidth and energy and just say, WWJD. What would Jimmy do? What would Jimmy do? I come to a fork in the road. I say, what does the perfect listener to my podcast want for my podcast? And Jimmy makes the decision for me because I know Jimmy. I know what Jimmy would want. Left, right, left, left, right. No more time is wasted. I am off to the races. Now, questions I get.
Just brief stop here. We're going to take a quick moment here for everybody in the chat right now. Put your hands on the keyboard. Tell John, what was your number one takeaway so far from this session? What is something that you just heard? It really resonated. It really hit differently. Tell me in the chat. Maybe it's the avatar explanation that John went through. Maybe it's the one of the myths, the no time, the voice, all that kind of stuff. Tell me what your number one takeaway is so far. Let me know. What would Jimmy do? Marianne says. Jackson, what's up, Jackson? Jackson says, get your avatar correct. Cheryl, how to figure out my avatar. Arlene, avatar. Marina, what's up, Marina? How you doing? 500 words on your avatar. She's going to be working on it. I love it. Jay, define your listener. Scott McCain, what would Jimmy do? That's great. I love it. Somebody to refer to. Jeff, know your listener. Paula, writing lists. I love it. Good stuff. Asia says, focus on your avatar's life experience, not demographics. Love it. Shri, creating a persona of my listener. Love it. Colton, find my zone of fire. I'm going to do the exercise tonight to figure out what my podcast is going to be about. I love it. Action. I love it. We got Jackie says curiosity/expertise, that zone of fire. I love it. Good stuff, guys. I love it. I love the participation. Keep it coming. I'm going to stop again before John wraps up again to see if you have any more takeaways as he goes on. So get ready for that. You're going to be quizzed.
FAQs, frequently asked questions. So questions I get all the time when it comes to this kind of stuff is, John, what should my podcast about? How long should my podcast be? Should it be interviews? Should it be topic-based? How many times per week should my podcast be released? What category should I be in? Look at that face right there. That is my face, and I'm not impressed because you should not be asking me these questions. The only person you should be asking these questions to, which a lot of you know by your takeaways, is your avatar. WWYAW. What would your avatar want? Why do you care what I would want? Because I may not be the perfect listener of your podcast. I'm probably not the perfect listener of your podcast, but your avatar is. Let's talk about types of podcasts. Number one, interview-based podcasts. There are interview-based podcasts, and this is in fact what a lot of people think that podcasts only exist of. It's just not true. There are many more types of podcasts than just interview-based podcasts, but a lot of people think this is the only type of podcast. Now, Entrepreneurs on Fire is an example of an interview podcast. I only interview people. That's what I do. I interview people 7 days a week for 10 years, 3,700 episodes. It's been happening. I've been interviewing people. There's a lot of great interview shows that are out there, but that's not the only type of show. There's also topic-based shows. Ditch Busy is a great example of a topic-based show. This is Kate's podcast, where it's just her and a microphone, and she talks about different topics around systems and automation and different things along those lines. Like Ditch Busy is a topic-based podcast. It's Kate and a microphone. So I hope you guys are now thinking like, wow, like this could be something that I don't need to like worry and stress about finding the right guests and interviewing the right guests and having to have those conversations, because maybe that excites you. That's awesome. Interview podcast is something to think about. Maybe that doesn't excite you, but you know that you have an opportunity to sit down, write down the top 25 problems that people in your niche have. Those are 25 podcast episodes. Do one problem and a solution to that problem for 25 episodes. That's 25 episodes right there. If you do one a week, I mean, think about that. That's half a year's worth of podcasts right there. I mean, that's not quite that many, but it's getting there. It's almost that many.
Yeah. And a lot of people, you were mentioning how many decisions did you make today? You know, we make thousands of decisions a day. People ask me all the time, how do you come up with over 2,100 topics for your podcast, like episode topics? And it's just like, are you kidding me? Like, I make so many decisions. I think about so many things in business. There's so many levels to this. It's endless, really.
Endless. And just like a topic base can be endless, people told me when I launched Entrepreneurs on Fire, you're going to run out of guests. Listen, I've been doing it for 10 years, 3,700 episodes. I get 400 inbound requests of people that want to be on my show every single month. So, I mean, believe me, the content's out there for topic. The people are out there for interviews. There's great shows that are Q&A shows. Ask Pat's a great one. A good friend of ours, Pat Flynn, has a podcast. He just does Q&A. That's all he does. I mean, that could be a show for you as well. You can do variety shows. And actually, Entrepreneurs on Fire is not a great example of variety, but there are shows that do interviews, Q&A, topic as well. So maybe Monday's an interview, Wednesday's a Q&A, Friday's a topic-based show. Like you can do that as well, and that can be fun. You can do ongoing, like Entrepreneurs on Fire is ongoing. I've been doing it every day since 2012. Or you can do seasonal. And I think this is going to be a big relief for people. They think like, if I start a podcast, I can never stop. Like it just keeps going and going. It's on and on. No, Kate will like create 10 episodes. She'll have an idea for 10 episodes. She'll record those 10 episodes. She'll release those episodes over 10 weeks. And then that's done. That is a season that she's done. It's over. She'll take a month off. She'll take 3 months off. She'll take 6 months off. Then she'll come back with season 2, with season 3, with season 4, when she wants to, when it makes sense. So for those interview-based podcasters that are out there, people that want to get guests, well, guess what? Go to similar podcasts, their guest list. I can't tell you, when I interview people on my show and their interview goes live, that person will email me to be like, John, oh my God, as soon as the interview went live on your show, I got hit up by like 30 other shows because people look at Entrepreneurs on Fire and they say, oh my God, like that person was just interviewed on Entrepreneurs on Fire, like one of the biggest business podcasts in the world. Like that person must be on fire. That the vetting's already been done. I'm just going to get that person on my show. So like you can look at similar shows in your niche and who are they interviewing? Interview those people. Those people are obviously willing and excited to get on podcasts. Reach out to them. Industry magazines. I love looking through Inc. and Success Magazine and these other magazines that are featuring awesome people. And because that's my industry is Inc., Success, Fast Company. But what's your industry? It might be a different industry, but there's magazines for that. And that's a great way. Those guys have done some great qualifications. Industry conference websites. The easiest way that I found a ton, and Omar, I mean a ton of podcast guests to be on my show back when I first started, I went to Google in 2012 and I typed top entrepreneur conferences 2012. And guess what happened? I found an article by Inc. magazine that said top 21 entrepreneur conferences of 2012. I clicked on that article. And guess what? That article linked to that conference's website. I went to that conference's website, clicked on the speakers button, and some of those conferences had 10 speakers, 30 speakers, 150 speakers. These are people that are willing to fly across country, spend 2 to 3 nights in a crappy hotel room, get on stage for 45 minutes in front of 5 people, 45 people, 150 people, however many people are in their room, and then go back home. You think they're willing to wake up in the morning, brew a cup of coffee, sip that cup of coffee, flip on some headphones, jump on WebinarNinja, and have a conversation with me? Yeah, when I make it like that. So I was able to reach out to all these people who are like top people in the industry, who are like busting their butt, flying all around the world to get in front of people. And, you know, I mean, Entrepreneurs on Fire. I mean, I was getting tens of thousands of listens in the first couple months, hundreds of thousands of listens a month within like 6 or 8 months, and then millions as we speak now. I mean, they were getting so much more exposure. So that's just another great way. And then also, every guest that you have on, if they're the right guest, if they were a good guest, all you need to do is say, hey, you were a great guest. You know, people are going to be like, oh, thanks. Because everybody likes that compliment. And if it's true, tell them and say, I'm looking for people just like you. And guess what? People like you know people like you. So if you have any friends that you'd like to recommend, I'd love to have you. I love a quick intro. Just hit me up with a quick 2 to 3 sentence email intro, and I'll take it from there. And these people actually kind of like looking like a star, a stud. Like, yeah, I was just on this podcast. It was fun. And now they want me to recommend a couple of people. I'm going to recommend you. So like you're giving these people an opportunity to look good in front of their friends too. And people will take you up on that.
Totally, man.
Whoa. Before I get into podcast equipment, Omar, what do you got for me?
Yeah, I definitely have something for you. So there's so many advantages to having a podcast. I can't even enumerate them, but I'm going to give you 2 stories to just kind of illustrate. So our podcast, the $100 MBA Show, has been going for 8 years. We have over 2,100 episodes. We have around 125,000 downloads every single day. But we started with 1 listener. We started with 2, 3, 4, and we started building. As I grew my audience, we have a segment in our show called Must Reads, where I review some of my favorite books, an episode type variety show, like John said. And one of my favorite authors is Derek Sivers. I love Derek Sivers. His books, Anyone Can Do It, and Hell Yeah or No. And I just adore this guy. He's taught me so much, and I don't know him personally, but I did an episode about his book, his latest book, How to Live Life. And because I did this episode and I was so passionate about that book, out of nowhere, he finds my email. He emails me and he thanks me. He says, Omar, I'm getting a flood of customers for my book because of your podcast. Thank you so much for doing this review. He's thanking me like I'm the celebrity. I'm like, dude, you're Derek Sivers. What are you talking about? I'm like ecstatic that Derek Sivers knows I exist. So like now I have a relationship with the guy. If I ever wanted to bring him on the podcast or invite him to an event or a webinar, I have an opportunity. And the podcast gave me that, the podcast allowed me to get on so many stages. I spoke for the U.S. military a few times. I spoke at major podcasting conferences where Nicole and I are speaking at We Are Podcast here in Australia in November. It just gives me so much opportunity to share my message and my voice. And it also just made me a better communicator, because it forced me to get up on the mic, and our show's 5 days a week, and every day really think about what I'm going to say and how best to communicate it. And it's kind of like a martial art. It's like gives me a chance to be a master of what I do. So I highly recommend just starting a podcast just from those benefits, right? Let alone the monetary benefits that John's going to explain. But I just want to share a couple stories to illustrate how grateful I am that I started a podcast 8 years ago.
Yeah, I love that story. And it actually reminds me of a 2014 email I got from Tim Ferriss. And he said, hey, John, you're the podcasting guy. Can we jump on a call? And I got on like an hour video call with Tim Ferriss, and I like taught him how to podcast and gave him, like all these tactics and tools that I was using and all this stuff. And it was really an experience because he was like the guy for me for, like I read his book back in 2008 and like yada, yada. So many cool things can come from this, but let's move into podcasting equipment. What do you need? You need a computer, you need a microphone, and you need recording software. And guess what? You can actually do this without a computer if you so choose as well. Let's talk microphones. I recommend for a low cost, this is what I insist that my guests have at a minimum, is the Logitech ClearChat. It's $29-$30 on Amazon. For its bang, it's for the bucks, it's a great bang. It's a great bang for your buck. The Logitech ClearChat. What I recommend when people are willing to step up just a little bit, it's actually a pretty big jump in audio quality, is the HER 2100. This is what Kate uses for her podcast, and she loves it. I mean, it's a great microphone. We've given probably over 100 of these away over the years because there's just such a great microphone. It's around $70. For high cost, this is what I'm using right now, the Heil PR40. I've actually used it for every single episode. It's $327. We're talking broadcast quality audio. Is this necessary? Absolutely not. But, maybe in 6 months or 18 months, if you're doing well and you're monetizing and, Santa Claus is coming to town, this could be, on the wish list. Recording and editing software. My recommendation is Adobe Audition. I love it. I've been using it for every one of my episodes. I think it's fantastic. Audacity is a great option as well. It's free. You can just get in there. You can do it. It's the basics, but it's good. If you're a Mac person, GarageBand allows you to do this stuff as well. Again, it's free. It comes with Mac. So that is an option for you too. And within Podcasters Paradise, we actually have tutorials ad nauseum that's at length on every single one of these recording and editing softwares to just walk you step by step through becoming a pro. Now, after all this, like I just broke it down for you. It's not much, but is tech still holding you back? Do you think your studio needs to look like something crazy like this right here? I mean, this looks like, Ron Burgundy from Anchorman is going to jump up behind the computer right there. I mean, what's going on? This is the EO Fire studio, man. This is it.
Right.
And Kate, that photo goes way back. That's like a 2012 picture of Kate there on my computer screen. That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Oh,
Where's
man.
Kate at? Kate, you want to join on camera? It'd be good to see you.
She actually typed, I saw her. She goes, that photo is so old school. It was actually from my lake house in Maine. We took that back in like probably 2013, maybe 2012. No, maybe even earlier, maybe 2011. It could have been pre-EO Fire. But this is it, guys. It's a computer. Yeah, I've got like a little PreSonus Fire Studio there, but you don't even need that. And then a microphone. Like it's really that simple. Now I want to go into the 7-step podcasting process. Number 1, you record the podcast. Number 2, you add an intro and an outro. Number 3, you export that. It's like saving a document. Number 4, you tag the podcast. Number 5, you upload it to your media host. Number 6, you schedule it. And number 7, you publish. Like literally, it's just a 7-step process, and it's really not that difficult. And I'm going to hit the old play button here, and Omar, just let me know if something's not working on the video side of things. I'm seeing it working fine.
I see it.
It's
It's going good. Yeah.
I'm
Hey,
just
Kate.
typing in the podcast movement there. I'm hitting the record button. I'm actually going to say something into this. Prepare to ignite. This is me actually recording something, by the way, in Adobe Audition right now. This is step 1. I'm recording. Now, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to add an intro and an outro. I'm just going to copy these things. I'm going to bring them in there. I'm just going to drag my little podcast that I recorded there over to the side, drag in the intro. I'll squeeze that down a little bit here because it's kind of a long intro. So I'll bring that down a little bit. I'll bring the podcast episode right back up after the intro. And of course, a real podcast episode would be much longer, but this is just for sample purposes. Bring in the outro and boom. I'm going to export now. I'm going to just save this as an MP3. I'm going to go ahead and just hit the OK button. You're going to see this save as an MP3 right now. Boom. Now I've got an MP3 of this audio right there. That's it. That clip you're seeing right there. I'm going to open it with an ID3 editor. This is a tool that you use to tag it. And I'm going to go through the process here. And guys, I'm going to skip forward here for time purposes, but I mean, I just walked you through the first 3 steps of this process, and it only gets easier and easier as you go through because it's just not that hard. Now let's talk about growing your audience. Now, actually, before we do, I see.
But
Kate,
first,
How'd you join us in the video? How'd that happen?
Omar has my back here.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. She's got the ATR, rocking the ATR.
There's the ATR. Proof right there.
I am learning though that because I have my AirPod in and I can only have one selected, so I had to go with my AirPod. So this is for vanity purposes right now.
Vanity.
But hey, I've learned to never interrupt John during his production process, which you just saw in action right there.
Yeah, we'll talk about this later.
Yeah. In the zone.
It's so great to be here with you guys, though. I'm learning so much about so many incredible podcasts in the chat, and people have such amazing niches going and solo shows and interview shows. So this is so great. Thank you guys so much for rocking this webinar with us.
We got an amazing community.
I'm glad you didn't say you're learning so much from this webinar, because I'm like, you've seen this webinar about 2,400 times, but you did
in
say
the chat.
From the chat. I know.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. Cool. Good to see you.
Well, thanks for letting me hop on and say hi. I'll let John continue.
Holla. All right. Growing your podcast audience. Top 5 tactics. Guys, you need to leverage the podcast directories out there. We have Google Podcasts, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, Pandora, iTunes. There are so many directories out there that have massive audiences. Leverage those directories. I mean, guys, look at when you just are seeing like the podcasts that are out there right now, you are able to be one of these shows that are just amongst the big names here. And for instance, how do you leverage directories like this? Well, when you go to iTunes or Apple Podcasts and you type in the word entrepreneur, the second thing that shows up is Entrepreneurs on Fire. Like, think about the traffic that brings. Think about keywords that you want to rank for, that you want to be a part of. Like, that's really exciting stuff that you can be a part of, that for your keywords show up, and then people can subscribe to your brand, to your business. And again, 315 million people are accessing iTunes and Apple Podcasts on their iPhone. That means that 24 hours a day, people are within arm's reach of your voice, of your message, of the mission that you want to share with the world. Because let's be honest, when's the last time you've been outside of arm's reach from your iPhone or smartphone? And guys, right here, cars are getting smarter. You pop open your car, you turn it on, you get that little dash there. Podcasts, Spotify, they're all there. They're waiting for you right there. Let's talk about the perfect launch plan. Not
before we get to the plan, John. I promised my crowd. Let me know, guys, in the chat. Give me another takeaway, something that you've learned since the last takeaway. Pop it in the chat. Your number one takeaway. Maybe it's, the opportunity. All right. Maybe it's understanding that like now you are in people's cars, you're on people's phones. Let me know another takeaway that you've had. Pop it in the chat. Something that is in your head, like, man, I got to work on that. That's something that that really is an aha moment for me. I love it. Simple 7 steps. I love Arlene. Don't sweat the tech. Asia says, love it. Jeff. Insist on minimum audio quality from guests. I love that. Cool. Cheryl, how easy the equipment is. Paula, leveraging the different directories. Beautiful. Marina, the steps need to investigate tagging. Okay, cool. We also have Just Go For It by Gabriel. Just Do It by Mark. We got t-shirts here, guys. Come on. I love it. Good stuff. I love it. Industry conferences to find guests, Arlene says. This is good value. I love the fact that everybody's getting so much value from John's presentation. Guys, don't forget, if you have a question, we have a bunch of questions in the questions area. Just go into the questions tab and pop in your question. We have some really good questions from Jay and Marina and Eigel, Mark as well. So we'll be answering those questions for sure. Go ahead, John. You're all good.
Some people that actually might have been watching the video a little bit, I picked Gus up and gave a little Gus view. That's our 65-pound golden doodle, and he felt at least 65 pounds. I had to put him down pretty quick. That's a big boy. So let's talk about the perfect launch plan. What's the perfect launch plan? My friends, pick the date. Put a date on the calendar that you're going to launch your podcast. Plan the launch party. You guys are seeing the power of community here. Get some friends, get some peers, people in your mastermind to be excited about your launch. Warm your audience up. Let them know that it's coming. Have 1 month of episodes in the bank. You don't want to launch with just a couple of days worth of episodes because you want to be focusing on marketing for that first month. So have your episodes pre-recorded, ready to go. launch with 3 shows day 1 to really let people get the intro of your show. Your first episode, your introduction episode. Then episodes 2 and 3 is like your show. Give them a chance to really get a feeling and a vibe for your show on launch day. And again, that episode 1 that I mentioned that's your About Me episode. That's the About your podcast episode. There's a really great way to do it. We go into super details about the crafting of your About Me episode on Podcasters Paradise. And then you're always going to be talking to people about subscribing and rating and reviewing. You want people to subscribe to your show, not just listen. You want them to subscribe, to become a follower. And then if they like the show, to give you a rating and review, to give you credibility, to allow people to know that other people are liking your show. Now, number 3 is leveraging the audience of your guests. I mean, look at these studs that I had on. This is all, by the way, within the first 2 months of launching Entrepreneurs on Fire. Seth Godin, Tim Ferriss, Gary Vaynerchuk, Barbara Corcoran, Chris Brogan. I had these people on way back in the first couple of months. And then when the episodes went live, they shared the show with their audience. And all these people are like, I don't know anything about John Lee Dumas. I don't know anything about Entrepreneurs on Fire, but I want to hear what Seth Godin has to say. And he's recommending it. So they went and they listened to the show. They're like, this is cool. Let me subscribe. Let me listen to more. The first email that I have that goes out every single morning is to my guest. And it says, this is just an example template. We have so many templates in Paradise with things along these lines to show you exactly what to send to your guest when their episode goes live. Number 4, leverage existing communities. You have LinkedIn, Facebook, Meetup. Google Meetup, that's something that's kind of going away right now, but there's a lot of communities. Like think of Reddit, think of other things. You need to leverage the existing communities that are out there. And you need to say, hey, this is going to be a great fit for your show. Like I had my trainer had a great idea. He's launching right now a whole concept around people who have had that lap band surgery. He's creating this health program for them, how to work out, how to exercise. So he's going into different groups of people that have had that surgery, and he's letting them know of his content, of his show, of his training program, because those people are existing there and they're looking for that type of content. Social media. And again, this is just an example. Like we have all these tutorials in Podcasters Paradise you're seeing on the right-hand side of how to utilize social media to grow your podcast audience. Because once you have it, your show going live, you want to let people know on all the platforms that the show's there, how they can find it, how they can listen, how they can subscribe, how they can become a part of that show. And a tactic I love, I use a tool called repurpose.io, and it's essentially automatic. I'm able to take whole shows or just clips from shows and have this kind of beautiful backdrop you're seeing here. Like those audio waves are playing. All people need to do is press the play button and it's off to the races. They can listen to that content within a social media platform, which is really exciting. And my number 1 growth tip, stop focusing on growing. Stop focusing on becoming bigger. Focus on getting better. And I have so many people that are going to be, John, what am I doing wrong? Can you listen to my show? Like I'm working, like I'm marketing my face off and spending all these advertising dollars. And I come back to them and I got to be honest. And I say, listen, your show's bad. You're spending all your energy and time on marketing your show, on spending money advertising your show, but your show's bad. You can't put lipstick on a pig. Like work on getting a great show first. Because the best type of growth that your podcast is going to have is of other people, or is of your listeners telling other people, of your people becoming your evangelists. That's going to be the best tactic.
Yeah. Good little story. Nicole and I, by mistake, got in the car, and I don't know why, the first episode of the $100 Base started playing. I think it was the last, where like the latest episode went from the beginning of the feed. And this is literally 2014. I can't even tell you where I was recording. It was embarrassing. I think it was a closet or something like that. But the point is that I'm listening to this like cringing. I'm like, this is horrible. My God. Right? But you have to start somewhere, obviously. I'm being critical of myself. But it's actually a blessing that in the beginning, when you start your podcast, you don't have a huge audience, because you get to work on your reps, get better, feel better about you and identifying yourself as a podcaster and really owning it. Getting if you have guests, your guest list up, all that kind of stuff. And as you get better and better and better, the quality starts to increase, but also your audience starts to increase. And we didn't start promoting or I would say like getting sponsors or sponsoring other shows to grow our show until like 6 years down. And because it's like what John said, it's really a waste of your money if you're marketing a show that is not going to convert. You want a high conversion rate. The best way to do that is to improve your show. And I love that takeaway. Good stuff, John.
Let's talk about some money. We're talking dollar bills, y'all. And the number one question that I get is, John, how do you monetize to the tune of over $150,000 a month? And just to share you even a more impressive stat, for 108 months in a row, we have netted, not just grossed, we have netted over $100,000 a month for 108 months in a row. So I can definitely speak from experience here. And the top five, number 5 is coaching and membership masterminds. These are 2 great ways to monetize your podcast. Because guess what? You are the authority figure. You are the influencer. People are knowing, liking, and trusting you. You should be offering coaching and masterminds around your topic. A great success story is our friend Jody Flynn. She launched her podcast about her avatar. She had 2 clients in 3 weeks for her coaching program. That was $13,500 in revenue. And the coolest thing is that was international. She was pretty much stuck to like this small town in Maine before, forgetting all of her clients. And both of these clients that she locked down from her podcast were overseas. That's exciting stuff. Crowdfunding. I built my audience around Entrepreneurs on Fire. I came up with the idea for these 2 journals in 2 consecutive years. The Freedom Journal was 2016. The Mastery Journal was 2017. And I said to my audience, hey, do you guys want this journal? Do you want this creation that I'm considering to create? And they said, yes, we do. I said, well, let's do crowdfunding to make sure you want it before I spend all this time, energy, and effort creating the journals, manufacturing them, shipping them from overseas, whatever. And our first journal did $453,000 in 33 days. Our second journal, $280,000 in 33 days. So there's like $700,000 of people putting their money where their mouth was and they wanted a product. Then I took this money, we created it, and we went off to the races. So when you know you want to create something, you can use your podcast audience to prove that concept, to make people pay with their wallets. Number 3, affiliates. Affiliates. We've made millions of dollars over the years because guess what? We can't do everything. I have the best podcasting course in the world. I can't also have the best email communication course. Email platform in the world. I can't also have the best hosting, podcast hosting, or just website hosting platform in the world. But guess what? I am the number 1 ClickFunnels affiliate in the world. In fact, I was showing Omar, you might be able to see, where is it? Right there. That guitar right there, that custom guitar was gifted to me by Russell Brunson on his stage at ClickFunnels last year for being the number 1 ClickFunnels affiliate. Over $1.5 million just from ClickFunnels has been paid to me into my pocket, $1.5 million just for recommending their software. So that is a great way to monetize. What software that you're already using that you can and want to recommend it on your podcast. A great example of this is Greg from Tiny Leaps, Big Changes. Within a month of launching his podcast, he locked down 2 affiliate relationships where prior he had 0. Sponsorships are huge. We made $223,000 in sponsorship revenue last month, the month of August. $223,000. Thinkific, LegalZoom, ClickFunnels, ZipRecruiter, these are all past sponsors and current sponsors of ours. But like, these are, you listen to podcasts. There's companies that want to get in front of the podcast listeners. It's a great way to monetize. Kimberly Falker launched her podcast, the Premier Dance Network, and she has 3 podcasts in her network and they all have sponsors. So I wanted to bring this example because this is a niche. This is dancing. This is ballet. But guess what? Those people that sponsor their podcasts don't want to sponsor Entrepreneurs on Fire. Wouldn't make sense, but they want to sponsor her podcast because that's their products, their services. So in Podcasters Paradise, we teach you how to find sponsors, the email templates to use, the contracts that we use, how to negotiate to make sure that you're getting the best deal for yourself and your podcast. And let's talk about the number one reason: products. Products. You can create a product. What is a product? A product is a solution to a problem your audience has. Back in 2013, my audience said, John, we have a problem. We want to know how to launch a podcast. You've launched a podcast. You're doing it 7 days a week. You figured it out. How do we do that? And we launched Podcaster's Paradise, how to create, grow, and monetize your podcast. Now, that's one of many products we've launched over the years, but that is our most successful one. We've been running it now for 9 years, over 7,000 members, millions and millions of dollars in revenue, because we found a product that our audience wanted and needed. And a great example from Podcaster's Paradise is Justin Williams. He's been a member since 2013, House Flipping HQ. He launched his course, House Flipping Formula, and within 5 months of launch, he was able to absolutely crush it. Let me go back up there. Within 5 months of launch, he was able to generate serious revenue, take that great looking family of his on vacations and do cool things. He actually came down to Puerto Rico, got to hang out with him, and he's selling courses while he's down here. Like he was on top of the world. It was really awesome to see. And Eric Tate was another example, launched the Physician's Road. So again, I want to use different examples on different niches. There's a real estate podcast. This is a physician's podcast. And he was able to raise over $800,000 in investments because his podcast brought in the investors. His podcast brought in the credibility. He was able to make things happen. And now I want to take a deep breath, a really deep breath. And before we move forward, I heard that you already took your deep breath, Omar. Anything you want to dive into before we hit the grand finale?
We got some questions. You want to take some questions, John?
Let's take a couple questions. Let's do like 3 questions, and then we'll do a ton more at the end as well.
Okay, sounds good. So I'm going to go from the top one in terms of votes. Jay's got 3 votes here. Just launched a seasonal podcast. Do you recommend running content between seasons to retain subscribers?
Absolutely. It's a brilliant idea. It can be really short form, really fun. You can even do teasers like, hey guys, the upcoming season's up. I want to give you a sneak peek of one of the episodes. Or you can just say, hey, what do you want to hear? Like send me an email. Like try to get engagement from those listeners. Sneak peeks, absolutely the way to go. Republish those sneak peeks on your different social media platforms. Make it happen.
Love it. We got a question from Marina saying, how much do you edit the audio before publishing your podcast?
Now, I've edited 3,700 episodes. By the way, you can farm that out. There's a lot of great companies that do editing. I keep it all in-house because it's one way that I kind of like I want to keep my skills. Like I don't want to lose my skills of editing. I want to continue to understand the language of podcasting and editing and Adobe Audition. So I edit every single one of my episodes, and it takes me between 2 to 3 minutes. Because I don't over edit, my friends. I'm not stressed out about every and every ah. I just go to the really key things that need to be edited, like adding the intro, adding the outro, adding the sponsors, and that's it. It's really that simple. Now, it's going to take you more time at the beginning because you're going to figure things out. But every time you're going to develop systems and automations, and you're going to, within the trainings within Podcaster's Paradise, we teach you how to become efficient quick.
Love it. You answered the third question here. How long does it take to produce your daily podcast? A few minutes to edit, pop into the sponsors that you batch beforehand. So that's awesome stuff.
One day per week. One day I do 7 interviews. I do all 7 interviews in one day. And then one day per month, I do all the final editing of them. So literally in 5 days a month, I run a multi-million-dollar daily podcast.
I mean, we have a new king, but this is the king of batching right here, man. Oh my God. Marina asks, how much do you script your daily podcast?
So my daily podcast was, for the first 2,000 episodes, incredibly scripted. It was 5 questions, the same 5 questions. It was, I could literally like have just closed my eyes and just like talked. Like I was like so scripted. Like it got in at episode 2000, I made the switch to make a different show. And now the show has been different for 3,700 episodes. It's no longer scripted. It is just, we know the questions that are coming, but they're all different. They're all unique. And that's just me kind of deciding to change the show up. So either way works.
Love it. Those are 3 questions. Arlene, Debbie, we got your questions here. Don't worry. We'll get to them. All good. You're good. You good to go a little over, John?
Yeah, let's go a little over, but we're coming in hard to the end, so we'll
do
make
it.
it happen. All right, guys, we took a deep breath. We've talked about the creating your podcast, about launching your podcast, about growing your podcast. We talked about monetizing your podcast, and we're going to answer all of the remaining questions at the end of the show for sure. But I want to talk about Podcasters Paradise. What is Podcasters Paradise? Well, it is the premier podcasting community in the world, without a shadow of a doubt, without a close second. It is a place where there are step-by-step video tutorials for beginners to create and launch their podcasts, for intermediates to grow their podcast audience, and for experts who are ready to actually monetize to the best and highest level. Paradise has every resource that you will need, every step-by-step tutorial, every template, every question you have is answered. And the reason why I'm able to say that is because it includes a daily Facebook group, if you so choose to be a part of it daily, as often as you want, that Kate and I are in 7 days a week, answering any and all questions that people post in that Facebook group that is part of Podcasters Paradise. Here's a little glimpse of the welcome part of Paradise. Again, you can see we easily and clearly break it down into the create, grow, and monetize sections. Paradise also has that amazing community that I just mentioned, where again, every single day, we're just there answering questions. Someone's, podcast there got rejected, how to figure it out. We gave him all the answers right away. He got back in, he was good to go. Like, we're just there to answer your questions, to give support, to give guidance, all that jazz. So if you want feedback for your logo, for your show format, for your overall feel, we're there for you 7 days a week. We're exchanging the latest tips, tools, and tactics in the world of podcasting. We're helping you find guests for your show. We're finding opportunities to be guests, for you to be a guest on other shows. You get to exchange honest iTunes ratings and reviews. It's called Pay It Forward Friday. Every single Friday, we have this Pay It Forward Friday post where we say, hey, let's post our shows here. Let's listen to each other's shows. Let's give feedback. Let's give guidance. And if it's a good show, let's support each other by giving each other honest iTunes reviews every single Friday. You can hone your interview skills by practicing with other people within Podcasters Paradise. We always recommend that. And so much more. It also has a monthly live webinar for JLD and Kate. This is exclusive for members. So once a month, we jump on a live webinar just like this, and we just answer all your questions, and we just have fun with it. It's a really good, fun hangout. But again, that's like a live video. Every single day you have access to us in that Facebook group. So let's talk options. You could go at this alone, and guess what? People have successfully gone at podcasting alone. I'm not one of them. I hired a coach for thousands of dollars. I joined a mastermind for thousands of dollars, but people have done it alone. Or you could join Podcasters Paradise. Paradisers have fun. You can see me and Kate in the front there. You can see Omar in the back, baby. I see Omar.
This is the podcast cruise.
So much fun. There's Nicole. Nicole's like kind of in front to the left a little bit. She's waving her hand in a white blouse.
Well, I'm going to definitely start serving up some questions for us to answer. Just a quick one, guys. If you'd like to join Podcasters Paradise, I highly recommend it. I have some content in there. I think I did back in the day on SoundCloud hosting. But the end of the day is, like, if you have a shortcut to get somewhere, if you have a way to do things easier, to save yourself time, to save yourself money, in terms of, trial and error, this is the way to do it. I highly recommend taking, this leap if you're looking to, start or grow or monetize your podcast. It's a good place to be. On top of that, if you've been delaying for some time, this is going to push you because you have a community behind you. I know, John, you talk about how, you think about how many months and how many days you delayed your podcast and how much money you lost, knowing how much money you make on every episode now. So in this case, time is worth more than money. It's worth probably an exponential amount of money if you keep delaying. So just wanted to kind of give my seal of approval and just say to the guys, don't go the hard way. let's go to the questions. Let's go to the top. We have Eigel asking, it seems like most podcasts today also have video. Is this the new standard? Can you still grow a large audience with just audio?
Just audio, absolutely. I'm an audio diehard. That's what I'll do for the foreseeable future. I can't imagine switching to video for any reason. People that want to do video, I think there's only positives to it. You can repurpose that video on YouTube. You can repurpose it on different platforms that can really help you. Snippets on TikTok and Instagram stories, etc. So if you're a video person, video podcasting is a great idea. Great concept. You should do it. If you're not, like me, I just did not ever want to do a video podcast. Believe me, I've been plenty successful with an audio-only podcast.
Awesome. Mark asks, where do you upload to?
So you have a media host, the one that we use and recommend is called Libsyn, Libsyn. It's short for Liberated Syndication. We've been hosting with them for all 10 years of my podcast existence. And we have dedicated and in-depth tutorials within Podcasters Paradise about how to choose your podcast host, how to use them, how to upload to them, everything you need step by step.
Love it. Eigel asks, we got a ton of questions. I love all the interaction, guys. Eigel asks, why would big names be interested in airing on the podcast of a relative newcomer with little to no audience? I'm going to take this and I'll pass it to you, John. So yeah, you got to start somewhere, right? Even, I always like to say, John, myself, Tim Ferriss, Seth Godin, they all started with one listener, one subscriber, right? Like we all start with the same place, right? So my recommendation to you is just to get started, get some momentum. And guess what? The world is very small, especially the business and podcasting world or whatever your niche you're in is very small because you get to know people very easily. You start to interview one person, that person starts to grow their audience. That person can introduce you to another person. So if you don't get started, you don't have a chance to get those introductions or those connections. You want to add anything, John, before we go?
I just don't think anything needs to be added. That was a perfect answer. And let's go on.
Okay, cool. Debbie says, why would people listen to a podcast when they could be listening to a video?
So I would actually say, why would people be watching a video of two people's heads bopping when they could be going on a jog, when they could be doing the dishes, when they could be driving in the car, listening to the exact same content without the visual? Like the visual in some videos adds a lot. The visual in a lot of videos, when it's just two talking heads, like guess what? Omar's a good looking guy. On the right days.
You do all right. You do all right.
I mean, come on. And you know what? But are you really getting value out of seeing us right now? Like not really. Like there's people, hopefully, that right now are driving in their car with an earbud in, listening to this presentation, and they're getting a lot out of it. And this is a visual presentation. I mean, so there was value of watching this for sure. But there's value in watching some videos, and there's not value in watching other videos. It depends on how it's presented. And so since my podcast would just be two talking heads, I don't see that as a big value add and see no need for it.
Yeah, I also want to say that so this is something I learned from Nicole, who is a New York Film Academy graduate. When you create something like a video or an audio podcast, you are creating for the medium, right? Like, when you watch a movie, they know that you're going to be looking at the screen, right? And when you're creating a podcast, you know that they're not looking at a screen. So you have to create more context. You have to describe things. You can't use hand gestures. So you're a little bit more descriptive. If you see some of these highly produced podcasts, these storytelling and true crime podcasts, they use sound effects and all that kind of stuff and narration to make it enriching. That's a better experience because they're building that podcast knowing it's just audio. So it's never going to be as, that audio experience is going to be way better. It's not even going to be comparable to somebody listening to something that's actually meant to be watched. So that's my two-bit answer there. But I definitely feel like, audio, when it's built for audio, is superior. Arlene asks, what needs to be consistent to have a good podcast? Is it format, length, timing, etc.?
So it always is going to go back to, what does your avatar want? What does your avatar need? If your avatar is going to love a once a week show that's 20 minutes, then that could be a great show. If your avatar, for any number of reasons, needs more content than that because for a plethora of reasons. Create the show around your avatar, create the show around your perfect listener. My perfect listener needed to listen to an interview every single day when he was driving to work so that he got out of the rut that he was in, the depression that he was in, and got put on the right path. He was surrounding himself with the right people. So the cadence, the frequency, the length, the topic, the interview, that's all going to be decided when you do the tutorial around creating your avatar.
And just to piggyback on what John said, our avatar for the $100 MBA show, they're looking to learn something they can implement immediately after the show. So that's the purpose of the show. And that's we serve the avatar that's like, hey, I need something actionable. I go to another podcast if I want a mindset shift or a story or an inspiration. I need to do something to improve my business today. And that's why I go to the $100 MBA show. So my thing that I have to make sure I deliver on every single time I record an episode is they have to be able to do something at the end of the episode. If I don't do that, at the end of my recording, they can't do anything new, they didn't learn a new skill, then I failed that episode. So that's for me. And that comes from, again, my avatar, like John said. Elizabeth says, pros and cons of solo podcast hosting. Not sure if I'll do interview at least initially. Thank you. So John runs an interview podcast. I run a solo podcast. Tell me, John, what do you think?
Listen, I think starting with a solo podcast is a fantastic idea. It allows you to build up confidence, put in the reps, get used to what you're doing, get excited around it, have the spotlight be on you because you're the only person, you're delivering value, you're delivering knowledge. And then if it makes sense down the road, bring a guest on once a month, once every 6 months, once every 3 months, or maybe your show does evolve into an interview-based show as you're doing them and you're enjoying them and you want to do more. But if right now you're being kind of like your intuition is leading you into starting with a topic-based show, to me, that's a great way to start.
Yeah, and I'll just lean into that. I think take a look at yourself, be self-aware. Where are your strengths at? If your strengths is teaching and presentation, then maybe the solo show is a good place to start. If you're more of a conversationalist and you feed off conversation and you like to talk out loud and kind of figure things out on the fly, then a conversation podcast would be great. Love Gary Vaynerchuk, love him to death. He has a podcast where he interviews people. I think he should not be interviewing people. I think he actually should be doing a solo show because he's great at teaching and motivating and expressing himself. And I think that you should always leverage your strengths. Debbie asks, what do you need to make a sound healing podcast? ? The sound needs to be good. How long do people listen to a podcast? 2 minutes? And on social media, do we post the best to get the young folks listening in Belgium? Spotify, TikTok, Instagram? Thanks.
Listen, a podcast needs a $30 headset, the one that I shared earlier, and it needs you with a desire to deliver good content. Does that mean it's 3 minutes, it's 5 minutes, it's 7 minutes, it's 30 minutes? It goes back to your perfect listener. But I can tell you that, especially in today's world, a 3, 4, 5 minute quality podcast is definitely long enough for a lot of people in a lot of areas. So if you want to do high frequency, low time, as far as like 2, 3, 4 days a week, but only 2, 3, 4 minutes per episode, that can be a great podcast. And being over in Belgium, you definitely want to be on Spotify. I mean, Spotify is huge in Europe, so you definitely want to leverage that platform and just go from there. Like, don't overthink things.
Love it. Jackie says, how long should a podcast be?
So again, going to go back to beating my head on the wall here because it's the answer. It's the only answer. What does your avatar want? What does your avatar need? There's no perfect length. Joe Rogan does a 2.5 hour podcast that's forever, and I would never listen to it. I never listened to it. He got bought by Spotify for $150 million. My podcast is between 17 to 23 minutes because my avatar, that's his average commute time, and I crush it. I make millions of dollars per year. I know people that do 3 to 4 minute podcasts that also crush it because that's what their avatar wants. So there's never going to be an answer for all of those questions of what's the perfect time, what's the perfect frequency, what's the perfect X, Y, and Z. It's you sit down, you identify who your perfect listener is, and you craft the show around them.
Good stuff. Jeff asks, what distribution platform do you recommend that is free? I'm going to jump in here and say that all the platforms are free. So to submit to iTunes Apple Podcasts now, Spotify, Stitcher, Overcast, a lot of these podcasting apps already pull the feed from Apple Podcasts. So I would probably say the first ones you should submit to is Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Those are two big ones. And a lot of those just pull the feed from Apple. Would you concur, John?
I concur.
I love it. Tara asks, any software suggestions to edit video pods? John recommends Adobe Audition. My advice is, number one, just if you have something already on your computer, if you're like on a Mac, use GarageBand so that I know how the entrepreneurial mind works. It's like, oh, I got to buy something. I got to learn it. I got to figure it out. No, shortest A-B distance, right? Like if it's already on your computer, use that. Or if you're new to this all, just go with John's recommendation with Adobe Audition. They have like a monthly subscription on the cloud. Debbie says, what countries does Podcast Paradise reach? Belgium, France, Netherlands? Everywhere in the world. He's global. So same thing with our podcast. We use a tool called Chartable, and it actually tells us where we rank in all the different countries. I was learning that the show's pretty big in Africa, and I'm so happy to hear that. But once you submit your feed to these directories like Apple Podcasts or Spotify, they add you to all the directories around the world. Arlene says, why are all the online marketers moving to Puerto Rico? Is there a tax benefit? Arlene asks.
Yes. So if you want to check out, and I'll even drop the link here in the chat, that article is the reason why everybody's moving to Puerto Rico. Long story short, no federal tax, no state tax, 4% tax total.
Yeah, I was speaking to Patrick Campbell, who just sold ProfitWell, moved to Puerto Rico recently. Yeah, is enjoying it.
And it's Caribbean, by the way, so it's gorgeous.
Eigel, do you need to set up soundproofing where you record?
Negative. You don't need it. I don't have anything close to soundproofing in here. I close my door. I'm good to go. I have a good microphone. As long as you have a good microphone you're speaking relatively close to, you'll be good to go.
Yeah, the ATR and the Heil and what I'm using, all that kind of stuff. If you're just close to the mic, it sounds great. Kimberly, last question. We got one coming in as I say last question. Should you submit episodes to all distribution platforms or at the beginning, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or just focus on one at a time, then add the next ones after some episodes under your belt, and then the next one? I can grab this, John. So Kimberly, first of all, this is all explained step by step in Paradise, exactly screenshots, everything. So you know exactly what to do. So it's so simple. It's actually easier than that. You're just going to submit your feed, your podcast feed. And as you add episodes to that feed, it will automatically get sent and added to Apple and Spotify. So you only kind of submit it to Apple and Spotify once, which is the feed. It's like kind of like your URL for your website. And as you add blog posts, for example, it's the same thing when you add episodes. It just populates it. So every time we publish a new episode on the $100 MBA show, we find it in all the directories automatically. And Debbie says, thanks a lot. That's not a question. There's a comment. Thanks a lot. Very good. Very good answers. I've learned a lot. Thanks so much, Debbie. Guys, don't forget, if you want to join Paradise and join John and Kate on your journey to having a great podcast and launching it and growing it, we have the offer in the offer tab. So go ahead and click that. John and Kay are old friends. They're amazing people. We brought them on because they're the best. And full transparency, we just brought them on because we know they're going to be very valuable. So much so, I want to make sure you guys put in the chat right now before we wrap up. Did you get a win today? Tell me yes or no. Did you get a win today from today's podcast, from today's webinar? Go ahead and pop it in the chat. Did you get a win? Let us know. And we'll be taking this recording and popping it into our library in Ninja University over at Ninja Town, so you can watch again. So we got a lot of great fire here. Marina saying yes. Elizabeth says yes, sir. Tara, yes. We got Paula says yes, thanks. Arlene, excellent. Cheryl, yes. Kate, Kimberly. Yes, absolutely. Love it. John, Kate, thank you guys so much for being here today and being part of our community and giving so much value. I enjoyed it a ton, but let's not wait so long to see each other like this. let's grab a virtual coffee.
Let's do it, my man. I can't wait.
All right. Have a good one, guys. Take care.